One of the things that I focus on quite a lot in my classes, and I actually have a class specifically for this, is pronunciation. Now, I know that most students and even most teachers in Taiwan don't think very much of pronunciation. And a large part of that is because it's hard. Pronunciation is very difficult, it takes time. More importantly, it takes repetition. If you are studying most things about English, it's cognitive, it's knowledge. But when you're working with pronunciation, first you have a foundation of making sure that you stay in an English basis of articulation, an English speaking position, which is largely the opposite of what you would do when you're speaking Chinese or Taiwanese. But more importantly, it's only about 5 or 10% knowledge and 90% or 95% repetition, practice, saying things over and over and over in the right way over a longer period of time and in such a way that you have gradual improvement all the time. For most students, you work just enough to be able to say simple words in a simple way, just about the words by themselves, associating intonation with that word so that it corresponds to stress, which is certainly not going to be natural or normal, where we have intonation that corresponds to phrasing. So I spend a lot of time working with students on pronunciation, and I think that pronunciation needs to be a foundational effort whenever you are starting to learn English. Unfortunately, most students didn't do that, and so you are halfway through your English efforts or towards the end of your English efforts, which is a bad thing to say since language learning never ends. But you have never improved your pronunciation. It would be a good thing to do now. And as such, I have several classes just for types of pronunciation work. And I'm going to start doing these videos that focuses on words from Gabe Weiner's Fluent Forever list of 625 concrete type words. And the reason that I work on these is first that it helps you understand these words, but secondly, it helps you understand some of the pronunciation issues that you will have in every word. And it helps you work on these things in the context of overall efforts that you will need for English pronunciation in general. So that being said, if you would like to work on English pronunciation in a more focused way, I do have classes for that. You should contact me. Otherwise, here is a video talking about one of the words from the Fluent Forever list of 625 words. Okay, class, here's another in our series of recordings that are working with the pronunciation of Gabe Weiner's 625 concrete type words. This word we're going to work on is our first introduction of unreleased sounds and why the unreleased sounds are often concealed behind the normal habits that you as Chinese speakers or Taiwanese speakers often have. So to start with this, let's talk about this word. Now this word, most Chinese speakers, most of my students, will say something like at. I get this again, at. There's a break between the vowel and the consonant. So you're doing something that has that break. But that is not going to be what you typically hear with English, at least American English, where we would expect the sound to continue until the T is ready to be released or ready to be articulated. So this word in American English should be at. Now think about what's happening here. The first sound is about right here, with some tightness in the muscles right here, so you see the bottom teeth. And what is this doing? When you get the tightness here, It is pulling the middle of the tongue down so that we get more of a front sound. And then, because we need the voice to continue, we need to make sure that the tongue is moving up to the T through the front, right? Now your habit is to move the tongue up through the middle. This is a Mandarin way of moving. And then you will do the T with the mid-front of the tongue. But that is not going to be English for a lot of reasons, but primarily because if you move through the middle, you will cut off the voice. And because when you speak Chinese, the voice and the air are kind of related, you've cut off everything. There's no air, there's no voice, there's nothing. And you're moving up, and then you have the T. So you have this long break between the A and T, where there is no sound, no air. On the other hand, if you do it in an English way where the front of the tongue is going up, the weird thing is that if you do this the right way, the vowel will still sound like the vowel, even as you move the tongue up. So for instance, watch 9. So at the end there, my tongue was actually touching the top. But there's still a vowel sound that is either here or a little bit behind. So let me do that again. The sound kept going. And if you were moving things in an American English way, no problem. If you move it in a Chinese way, you'll get something like I. You know, the I kind of sound, which is why you would normally cut off the voice before you start to move. So what if you have something similar? So we just did that. What if you actually have this word? Now we have two things happening. Remember, for American English, we have to separate the front of the tongue and the back of the tongue. We have stuff going on here, we have stuff going on here. And this will be different than what we expect for Chinese, where we're doing stuff mostly through the middle. So we need, when we say this word, we have two things happening. We have the front, we have the same thing that we had with at, and then we have this K sound, which will be back here, right? Now, the first interesting thing that happens that you're really not familiar with is that this is going to be, put it in IPA, this is going to be an unreleased sound. Now, what does that mean? The K, just like the G and the P, B, and the T, D, K, G, these are sounds that are stops. We call them stops. The trick about a stop that you're not really familiar with at all is that the sound can be made when you stop. When the voice stops or when the air stops, as long as you are touching when that stopping happens. So if your lips are together and and your voice has continued until you close your lips, that will be a B sound. If you keep the voice going until you hit the top there, that will be a T or a D sound. If you keep the air going until you hit, that will be a K sound. Keep the voice going until you hit here, that will be a G sound. Of course, you're familiar with these sounds all being made on release, because that is what you're familiar with when you're speaking Chinese. So for instance, if I say t or b, that's very familiar. But if I say a word like this, you would say job, because you have to release to make a B. But I would say job. Now, a native speaker will hear a B sound there, but you probably did not. So that's the difficulty that we have with this word. We have an unreleased K, which means you have to hit with the air and mostly the voice still moving at the same time that you're moving the front of the tongue up to the T, just like you did with at. Your mouth will close a little, the front of your tongue will move. So you have these two happening at the same time, and then you release and you'll hear the T. Now what you'll probably end up doing is something more like akut, or usually ekut. Because you're worried about the K, you're going to pull back, and that's going to change the A sound. Now you're doing something more like that, A, right? And that will be incorrect. So we need something that's going to do the A, with the tongue nice and relaxed and spread out, more again in the English way, front and back, remember? We need the A here, and then as the air continues to go out, and the voice continues, we hit here, and we stop. Stop everything. Act. Now listen to the difference. This is going to be with just the vowel, and I stop the air, or this will be with the vowel, and I hit and stop the air at the end of there. Ah. Act. Again. Ah. Act. Again. Ah. Act. We did that sharp kind of stop, that sharp kind of ending. Now at the same time, like I said, we want the tongue to go up and be ready. Because as soon as we do that K, now we have to release. Act. 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 Now, the problem you'll have is that most people have, like I said, they've said this with a break in between. Act. 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 Which one is which? This is one of the reasons you want to keep the voice going all the time. Because without that voice going on all the time, you will not hear these unreleased sounds at all. Your brain just cannot process that sound. Let me put that T there because I've forgotten that. So the word in the list of 625 words is actually built on this. It is actually this word. So that's taking this one syllable word and breaking it into two. And in one way that makes it a little easier because you don't really have to have the T ready as soon as you do the unreleased K. But on the other hand, you have to have the tongue ready in a way that allows you to do the sound. Again, American English, right? So we have this first syllable combination with the unreleased K. I'm doing unreleased here, so this better be, I'm combining my two systems. Let's not do that. So I'm going to use the unreleased K in an IPA way, but the rest of it is going to be KK, since that's what Taiwan's familiar with. So in this, what most Taiwanese speakers will try to do is make it three syllables, akut, akut, which will not be correct, of course. This is two syllables. So think about what we did here and forget about the T. Just do the first part. Act, act, act. And again, stress here, so act, and then the next part. So for the next part, the T has to be up with the front of the tongue, and the mid-front and the middle of the tongue has to be down, ready to do the right? Actor, actor, actor. If you do this, where the voice stops too soon, it's not going to work. If you keep the middle of the tongue up, it's either going to make this middle sound, or you will have trouble doing your and it will sound like acted. So again, what we need to do here, keep the voice going, keep the tongue spread out so that you can do front and back sounds at the same time. You need to keep the voice and the air going so that we have an unreleased contact with this stop. And then the tongue has to move up in the front to the T at the same time that you're moving back to the K. And then you need to be in that position, ready to do an Now, if you move too far, you'll get all the way back here, and this would again sound like a in the sound, not a It will sound like the bottom of the tongue. And so what we want when we're doing this sound from the T you want to move the middle of the tongue down more than the front of the tongue back. Tur. You want something like tur, not tur. Tur. T. Tur. So try this for yourself. Actor. Actor. And you'll be able to make it faster now. And again, don't try to make it faster. You want faster to happen naturally. If you have practiced this slowly, your brain will progressively get faster. But if you try to make it faster, you'll start skipping some of the key points that you're having here. But I want to point this out really quickly. We have one word out of our 625, and we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different things that you must be able to do in an English way for you to be able to say this one word. And if you can't do that, when you're ready to start connecting this word and linking it to other words, you're not going to be able to do it. When a native speaker says this word quickly, you want to be able to hear it. And if you can't say it, you will not be able to hear it. Now, this is one of the reasons that I focus a lot on pronunciation. Sammy focused a lot on pronunciation. And it's one of the reasons that I have a class just for working on pronunciation.